Okay, Sarah, right, here we are in the mean streets of Richmond. How's campaigning going for you so far?
It's going really, really well. We're getting a very positive response on the doorsteps. We're noticing a real difference from when we campaigned last year.
Okay.
We're optimistic. We're hopeful for a good result.
Okay, now, to clarify, your position on Article 50 is that you would block it, you would represent this constituency and you would vote against it.
Absolutely, and we've been very clear about that in our campaigning. If I were elected as MP for Richmond Park, I would vote against invoking Article 50.
Now, isn't this completely against what you were saying before, because people may have read in the Telegraph that you had been saying before you absolutely accept Brexit and then now you're changing everything? What's the story there?
So I wrote a blog post on my personal blog, and it was before I was a candidate, before there was a by-election, before the High Court ruling on Article 50. And I wrote as a Remainer, as a very passionate Remainer, as someone who campaigned for Remain, and I was regretting that we had this Leave vote, and I was trying to work out where we move forward from here. Yep. But one of the things I felt very strongly about was how antagonistic the campaign was becoming. Particularly, I felt Leavers against Remainers. And so I wrote something to that effect on my blog, that what we really needed to do was to come together to move forward together. So then the Telegraph wrote an article, and they took some of my words on that blog and they quoted them out of context, and it made it sound like I was happy with Brexit, which I'm absolutely not.
Right, okay, yeah. I mean, it was a difficult time because, I mean, we actually wrote plans for what we should do in science for Brexit and what we should do in science if there was a Remain vote.
Yeah.
And then we had a Brexit plan for science going forward.
Yeah.
But now we're starting to think, what about if the will of the people does shift? And do we have sensible plans that we can go forward with? So
yeah,
I guess this is about keeping options open, isn't it?
I think this is an interesting time to be having this by-election, because at the time that it started, there was no possibility that of the Remain side sort of coming back, as it were. But since we started the campaign, we've had the High Court ruling that Parliament needs to vote on Article 50, and we've been able to change our stance and actually be a lot more positive about our Remain ambitions, if you like. That actually is what we really, really want. As a party, we don't want soft Brexit, we want to remain.
Yeah, so the politicians are being brought back into play. Now, a word on Christian Woolmer, who's the Labour candidate, and he came in saying that he too would block Article 50 and he's passionately pro-EU and understands the value of the EU to science and our economy and standards. Why should people vote for you rather than him?
Well, so the first thing to say is, he had the advantage of starting his campaign after the Article 50 ruling, so he was able to come in right at the beginning and be completely unequivocal about his stance.
Yep.
And it made us, because we started our campaign prior, we were playing a bit of catch-up, but I think everybody now is clear on our position. But I think also my position is the same as the Liberal Democrats' position, whereas Christian is completely at odds on his party, with his party. John McDonnell came out just last week saying that Labour would vote to invoke Article 50. So, Christian is very much a kind of lone voice in the wilderness, really. I mean, I think he's right, but, he's not backed up by his party.
You say lone voice in the wilderness, but
in the Labour Party.
A lot of Labour
that's true. No, that's right.
The majority voted to remain, and also a recent, as I told Christian, a recent poll in Labour list of 2,484, I think it was, people. 73% of them said that Labour should keep the option to block Article 50.
Yes.
And yet you've got John McDonnell saying what he said. Yeah.
And they're all over the place. And I think what's interesting in this election is we're finding on the doorstep lots of prior Labour voters are prepared to vote Lib Dem this time. They're going to put their tribal instincts aside simply because that's what they believe. They believe that we should keep the option of remaining in the EU on the table, and that the way to do that is to vote against Article 50.
Right. Now, a little bit about your background. You're a local.
That's
you
right,
live
yes.
here,
I live in the constituency.
And you work at the National Physical Laboratory.
That's right, yes. It's just over the river from here in Teddington. I've worked there for about 2 years.
And as you come through Teddington, you see Teddington, home of National Physical Laboratory.
That's right.
Proudly emblazoned. So tell us what it does.
So National Physical Laboratory, it is the UK's centre of excellence for measurement. So it does, the most accurate measurements. It's the home of the atomic clock, where that was invented. So pretty much much. It's the home of time in the UK.
Maybe they should take on polling, because there's a bit of a need in that department in order to get good predictive capacity.
That's right, yes. In a world where, you can't be sure of anything anymore, in a post-truth age, it's good to have a centre of excellence for measurement where you can be absolutely certain that the measurements are accurate. That's right. Although I should make clear, I work there in the finance department. I'm an accountant, I'm not a scientist.
Yeah. But switching to science and the importance of the EU for science, and where the UK science community goes now, and the Lib Dem position on that.
Yeah, we're extremely concerned about how research and development, both in our universities and in our other sort of centres of science excellence, how that's going to be funded if we are no longer able to partake in some of the programmes that provide EU grant funding. That's something we're really, really concerned about. We're pushing the government for answers on that. It's just one other reason why we think it's the right thing to do is to remain in the EU. But it'll be something that's a key part of our campaign, is to make sure we've got some answers on how, if we leave, how that funding is going to be replaced.
So if the government start offering funds for science and put it centrally in a new industrial strategy, as seems to be shaping up, will that be adequate?
I think we'd need to see the detail. I think what we really need to understand is how those funds then are going to be allocated, and what the process will be for applying for them, and so on and so forth. And also, will it be sufficient to replace what we potentially lose from leaving the EU? So I think it all depends on the detail.
Yep. And will it be sufficient to replace our position in the world as part
because
of course
the other concern is that so many, and I'm talking about my own place of work, but I know this is true for so many other places, is being able to attract scientists and researchers from around the world. And if we start to lose the ability to have free movement of people across the European Union, then I think that will really impact science research in this country as well. It's not just about the funding.
Yeah. So this Richmond election really is about Brexit then?
Well, I think it's an opportunity for people to send a very, very strong message to Theresa May that, we don't want a hard Brexit, that the people of Richmond Park would like to remain in the EU, and that is something that we still want to fight for.
So Richmond can send a strong message then?
I think so.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for your time.
Not at all, thank you.